Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Olaf Storm, and if you're a returning viewer here, you might have noticed that I'm working on an animated film about rock climbing. I will still keep mentioning this in my videos, just in case any new people are joining in, so that they get a bit of context. In a previous video, I started working on the background for what will be one of the longest shots in my film. The shot will feature a continuous camera move showing my two climbers in a time-lapsey fashion as they work the moves of the climb that they are projecting. It will seamlessly cut between weather conditions, which is showing that time is passing and that they're not just there for the day, but rather returning over a long period of time. It'll be a good way to show that they're making progress, a bit like a training montage. This shot has been in the script since my first draft and has been something I've wanted to tackle for a while now. I painted the background mountains and boulders a little while ago and got it working so that the 3D camera slowly orbits the boulder over the 500 frames that I've allotted for this shot. So if you want to see this other video of me painting this background, I will have a link for that below. I populated the foreground with some out of focus blades of grass. This was achieved using a painted grass asset that I dropped into a cloner object in Cinema 4D. If you want to know how this effect is created exactly, you can join me on Patreon, where I cover that in a video. As the orbit of the camera is really quite slow, the foreground is what shows the movement the most, so by adding some detail there, we see this movement better. Now that the framework for this background is built, I have two challenges to tackle. One is to create all the weather conditions that I want my shot to swap between, and the second is to animate the characters so that they quickly move around in a sort of time-lapsey kind of way. We will start by looking at how I animate the characters, but before we do so, let's quickly illustrate what I'm actually after here. I will divide the 500 frames, which is about 20 seconds played back at 24 FPS, into 7 sections, some being a bit longer and some a bit shorter. All of them share the same long camera orbit so that it looks like it's filmed in one take, but we will hard cut between different days and weather conditions. So we start with a sunny day and then cut to a slightly foggy day and overcast day and then maybe a rainy day and then back to a sunny day and so on. So everything will be played back in time-lapse, so the clouds will move quickly across the sky and my characters will buzz around in that time-lapsey kind of way. Now let's take a look at how we can create these characters. I could go down the approach of painting a lot of different versions of them and then cycle through that, but to make that look convincing and varied enough, I would need quite a few drawings. Instead of doing that, I'm going to use a tool that I've showed you in a previous video, which is my Rokoko Mocap suit. I've made 3D versions of my otherwise 2D animated characters in this film that I can use for shots like this. For this film, I'm mixing a bit. For wide, faraway shots, I'm using these 3D versions, and for more close-ups, I'm traditionally 2D animating them frame by frame. First off, as we've seen here, the full scene is actually mapped out in 3D, so it lends itself well to slot my 3D characters into it. As we're cutting between different days here, I will have to consider changing maybe the clothes of the climbers, the way the crash pads are laid out so that they swap around when the different cuts happen, as well as change the movement pattern of my characters a bit to match the conditions. So there's quite a lot to consider here. Thankfully, this suit allows me to record a lot of mocap data easily that I can play around with. If you want to see another video that's using the same suit, you can check out this video here on my channel. You can also find a link below that will take you to Rokoko's website if you want to check out the suit for yourself. Rokoko did sponsor this video by sending me this suit. I think it's a really cool product and I've gotten a lot of use out of it already. When recording the mocap data, I try to get some poses that shows them standing around talking, being idle, sort of sitting on the crash pads, changing my posture a lot to get as wide a range of poses as possible. For the actual climbing, I just try to get into poses that sort of represent the climbing poses. The mocap suit doesn't really register both legs off the floor that well, so there's no real point in actually trying to get on a climbing wall or hang off a table or something like this. I just try to sort of replicate the climbing poses by standing in funny positions. After exporting the captured data from Rokoko Studio, I could select all the keyframes in Cinema 4D and squeeze them down into a shorter period of time. I don't mind if some of the frames are a bit buggy or looks a bit funny. I can always clean that up in the end if I find that I need it. What this gives me though is a huge selection of poses that I can now sample from. As most of my captured data is quite stationary in one spot, I animated the overall position of my character for almost every frame of the animation, so that they have that jittery look that you would get if you sped up a few hours of footage into a few seconds. When out bouldering, most of the time is actually spent sitting on the mats anyways, chatting while recovering between attempts. So in terms of climbing, we would only manage to capture a few frames really of them being on the actual rock. I think for this effect, the Rokoko suit was a massive help. Having to pose these guys into such a large amount of different poses would have taken ages if I had to do this manually by hand. Now on to the next part, which is to change the conditions of the environment. I did this mainly in After Effects. I rendered out the foreground separate from the background from Cinema 4D so that I could have more control in the composite. For the first section, which is a sunny day, I animated the clouds moving quickly towards us. This was achieved by first creating a particle system that animate a custom sort of 2D looking cloud asset flying across the canvas. By turning this whole layer into a 3D layer in After Effects, I can angle it into the perspective of the scene and suddenly have clouds fly across the sky. I also animated dark shadows of the clouds moving across the environment as they pass. For the second condition, I adjusted the colors a fair bit for the whole scene, removing some contrast and dropping the saturation quite a bit. As this is supposed to represent a misty, overcast day, I created another particle system for the misty cloud cover in the background and gave it a bit of a painterly texture by running it through a displacement map. Here my characters are also wearing slightly warmer clothes. The third weather to be featured was rain. I really played around with particles for each of these scenes, and for this one I created a dark cloud cover that swallows the peak of the mountain. Just before the rain starts, I made my characters move their pads under the overhanging stone, taking shelter and being trapped by the bad weather. Bad conditions to be out climbing, to be honest, but you never know how the weather might turn in the mountains, so sometimes you just get caught in rain. For the fourth section, I kept it simple, back to a sunny day with blue skies. I made my characters walk in the beginning to include some more variations in the movements. For the fifth condition, I went for a nighttime setting. This one was the only one that I gave some three-dimensional lights to, so this one I took back into Cinema 4D again and sort of altered it in there. Here they brought a floodlight to see what they were doing. I like how they became silhouetted by this illuminated boulder. I animated the night sky slightly rotating and airplanes flying by. The second to last condition is quite similar to the second condition, with a misty cloud-covered environment. I wanted it to feel somewhat windy, and as we are at some altitude here, they're basically just inside a cloud. The final section is back to a warm day again. I imagine they would aim for more good weather conditions than the opposite, but when the motivation to climb is high, you also take what you get. I might want to add some more foreground elements on the left here, but for now I'm really happy about how far this shot has come. I hope you enjoy seeing these updates on how some of the shots I create for this film is coming together. For the next shot I tackle, I think I will focus on a bit more of a straightforward one, maybe a flat painted background and 2D animated characters on top. It's good to vary the challenges you put on yourself to not lose momentum when working on a large project like this. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, comment what your favorite weather condition is like in general. Are you a sunny day person? Maybe you like cozy rainy days? Or maybe frozen winter days with some skiing is what you prefer. You let me know. Big thanks to all my Patreons for their continued support and for making these videos happen. You can join me there to support the channel and see more videos. I'll see you guys in the next one.